G'day camper. Today I'm reviewing the Coleman Hyperflame camping stove. Now, this stove is pretty well known for an irritating flaw, which is user fixable, but I think they might have actually fixed it from the factory. Having said that, is there more going on here? So who is this stove for? I'd say it's for people camping from a large vehicle. It's a bit too bulky to be putting in a hatchback or taking camping in a smaller vehicle, or for people going out in camper trailers or caravans if they don't already have some sort of outside cooking facility. As far as crew size goes, I'd be pretty happy using this stove with any number more than one pretty well. If you're a camping duo or you're camping with a mate or a group of mates or a family, this stove's for you. If you're a solo camper or you're just cooking for yourself, it's a bit overkill, it's a bit big, it's a bit much for just solo. Now before we look at hard stats, I just want to reiterate that no review on this channel will ever be sponsored by the product or the company whose product I'm reviewing. Now it's pretty big at 62 long by 36 wide and 13.5 centimeters tall, but that is what allows it to handle two 30-centimeter pots side by side. The chassis is steel with plastic bumpers on the corners. The weight is probably about mid-range weight at 7.1 kilos. It runs on propane, which can either be a big gas bottle or those small portable green camping ones. It's got a very nice 3-year warranty. I'm impressed by that. And it'll set you back about 230 Australian dollars. There's not much more to be said for it, so let's take a look. Heavy duty clasp to keep it locked on the front there, a regulator, and a gas hose. So you can use those small green camping gas bottles straight on the regulator, or the fat end, I think that's a BOM fitting, goes to a 3/8 fitting on the other end, and that's to go to your pretty standard camping gas bottle. It's got a swivel handle on the front here. It's big and bulky and pretty overkill if you ask me, but otherwise it's all right. Flip open the lid and there's a fair bit of twist in it, but I don't think it's going to break anytime soon. Got your regulator there, it just goes straight into the side. That's where you can connect one of those green small camping propane bottles straight into that if you want. Or the way I prefer to do it is I'll hook up the hose and run it off a gas bottle. One of those little green camping bottles sets you back somewhere between 10 and 15 Australian dollars, and it should run this stove for about an hour to an hour and a half tops. These are the wind block stove supports. This is kind of Coleman's selling point. They remove pretty easily. They just pop in and out for cleaning. This is the thing that removes the need for any wind shielding on the sides here, and that's what means you can have two 30-centimeter pots side by side. You can overhang the edges of the cooker a bit. It's got spark ignition. I do love that, nice and simple. Don't have to have matches handy. Now I'm gonna get a pot because I want to light it up with a pot on it and see if it does this thing that it sometimes does. Now it only does this when it's cold and when there's a pot on it. Will it do it? Oh, here it goes. Yep. You heard it whistling just a little bit then, but I tell you what, if it's a cold day or a really cold morning and you fire that up for the first time, the whole campground thinks that there's a banshee on the loose. It screams. It's not a problem, it's really weird. I think it's something to do with the wind block pot thing. So each of these burners is 12,000 BTUs, and that's not bad. It's probably about mid-range. There's plenty of camping stoves that are higher than that. For a bit of comparison, your hot plate at home is anywhere from 5,000 BTU for a small one up to like 18,000, or one of those portable butane stoves, they're about 5,000 to 7,000 BTU. Now while this water boils for absolutely no reason at all, I'm going to share with you my use experience over a number of camping trips. This stove has been used on about 5 trips and has probably cooked about 10 meals. Bacon and egg brekkies, pasta, bolognese, porridge for breakfast, and of course a few water boils for all sorts of reasons. And that was enough for Rhiannon. I had to pack this thing away and use the gas cooker inside the camper trailer before she threw the spatula into the bushes. You see, that's because temperature control on this stove is a problem. But not in the same way that other people have done reviews on them in the past. Not to my experience anyway. I think it's just time to talk some pros and cons, hey? The pros. Number one is that as a regulated stove, you just get consistent performance whether your gas bottle's full or nearly empty, whether the weather's hot or cold, whether you're at a high altitude or a low altitude. That's the function of the regulator, to keep it working evenly. There is a con very specifically related to this regulator, which I'm going to get to, but for now, on to pro number two. I love that they include that gas hose so that you don't have to use the small, more expensive propane cylinders. You can purchase these hoses off the shelf, but it's just nice to have it included. Number three is that the simmer problem that everybody talks about, the biggest problem with this stove, seems to have been fixed. So right from new, out of the box, I can get this stove to simmer. No problem. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about with this problem, or if you have this stove and you have simmer problems yourself, make sure you stay tuned for my tips and tricks at the end. I've got something good for you. Number four is that this stove is super hot. I'm not kidding, like 12,000 BTUs, as I said, there are stoves that are higher, but I feel like the wind block supports actually do quite a lot to really boost the efficiency of the flame. And my final pro, number five, is you cannot blow that flame out. Watch this. It's still going. Even that didn't blow it out. That blower is capable of 187 km/h wind. But these wind block supports aren't the be all and end all. It's time to go on to the cons. Con number one is that as soon as you turn that burner down, the flame becomes susceptible to even a light breeze, to be honest. This popping that you hear in this clip, that's the sound of the burner being extinguished by the breeze and then rapidly reigniting under its own heat, like residual heat left in the burner. And to be honest, it wasn't even that windy, really. You turn it up enough to stop it from doing that, and then your food starts burning. Now, to be fair, this is the same for any stove, but I just want you to be aware that the wind block pot supports, while they're great, they're not a magic bullet for everything. On the back of that comes con number two, is that the temperature control is really finicky. The knobs don't have a stopper in them, so they just turn and turn and turn. Also, each knob goes from 0 to hotter than a flat screen at Cashies in like the tiniest turn of the knob. So you're right down there, gently twisting the knob, trying to watch the flame. Con number three is the splash guard underneath stains really easily. I did see a few comments around the internet about this being the case, and I have found it to be true. It cleans up well enough, so like food and all the actual matter and grease comes off it, but it leaves marks on there. So it's always going to look dirty, even though it's clean. Here comes a log falling out of a tree. Gotta watch your head around here. And my final con is that regulator specifically fits only this stove, which means if it goes, if the regulator fails, it's not going to be so easy to get a spare when you can't just pick one up from, you know, those general stores you get in small towns where they sell a loaf of bread next to a roll of mozzie coils. It's not the sort of place you're going to find this regulator. Now, repairability. I like my camping gear to last a long time. It's just more sustainable, so I need parts and it needs to be pretty easily repairable. How does it fare? Pretty well, really. You can get a spare regulator, and given what I said in the cons about it being specific to this stove, that might be a good idea to carry a spare one anyway. You can get a barbecue plate accessory for it, that'd be pretty handy. That hose that I mentioned before, that's like a $20 to $30 hose, so you can get them easy enough from most camping stores. You can get replacement knobs, and of course a carry bag. I wouldn't mind getting a carry bag for this, just to stop it from rattling around and keep it looking nice for a bit longer. Now, another note on repairability, I actually decided to pull it apart just to see what's going on under there and if it's easy enough. And yeah, look, it's pretty simple. A bunch of screws around the top here remove the cover plate, and then after that there's just one screw holding down each burner. Once those are out, it's pretty easy to get at the jets, so you can clean them. I've got a video for servicing gas stoves that covers all that, so you can get your gas stove running right. Pretty simple, even the piezo igniter should be easy enough to replace if it ever fails on you. And have I had any issues or breakages? No, nothing at all. It's pretty sturdy, it's a pretty simple device, there's not much that can go wrong. One of the nuts that holds the temperature dial in came loose on a really corrugated track, and it wasn't as easy to do that up as I would like, because instead of using a normal 6-point nut, they've used some weird 5-point thing that nothing fits, so you have to use a pair of pliers to do it up. Tips and hacks. Number 1 is when you're selecting pots and pans to use on it, try and choose ones that are as big as or wider than the wind block trivet. That's because if you choose them narrower, air can get in across the tops and it reduces the effect. Wind gets in and screws it up pretty much. Number 2 is that I might recommend carrying a simmer mat as part of your kit. If you're having trouble getting that simmer down low enough without it popping and blowing out, the simmer mat's going to allow you to have your gas up a little bit higher and distribute the heat more evenly. And my third and final tip isn't actually mine. If you have the problem where your Fyreknight stove won't simmer, which either Coleman has now fixed in the newer models, or I just got lucky with this one, there is someone that made a video on how you can fix it and get a good simmer out of this stove at home by yourself. So get onto that, and thanks Daniel for helping so many people out with what should have really been fixed from the factory a long time ago. So what's my verdict? Well, if you like cooking with high heat all the time and you struggle getting all the pots and pans to fit on a camping stove, I reckon this one's for you. However, if you like good adjustable temperature control and you like to simmer your foods, I don't think this one's for you. In that case, I'd be looking at a different stove, possibly one with a few different size burners. That way you can get your smaller burners to do your simmering and your bigger burners for the punchy high heat. And as always, if you've got any thoughts and opinions or ideas around this stove or camp cookers in general, make sure you leave a comment down below, and you may just be helping a fellow camper in the future.